Coming up, the California recall is a bust. We'll talk with the Native leader about the results and how tribes are preparing for the next gubernatorial election. Plus, the clock is ticking for Congress to pass a budget or face a government shutdown. We'll talk with John Tahsuda about that and more. I'm Patty Thalohungva. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from Indian Country Today.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. ASU offers the only online undergraduate digital media literacy degree, teaching students how to recognize and combat inaccuracies on all platforms. They are using cutting-edge tools and tactics to separate fact from fiction in a digital world overloaded with misinformation. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Thalohungva. An investigation is underway at a Seminole-owned casino in southern Florida. An explosion Monday left 26 people injured at the Seminole Classic Casino. Authorities said the explosion happened around 9:50 in the morning, local time, and was caused by fire suppression equipment that exploded. A spokesperson for the Seminole tribe says none of the injuries were believed to be life-threatening. The rupture happened on the casino's second floor, but it was powerful enough to knock down drywall to the first floor. 6 people were taken to a local hospital, while 20 people were treated at the scene. The casino is now being investigated by the fire marshal's office to make sure they learn what caused the rupture and to avoid it in the future. The casino reopened Monday evening. Squaw Valley Ski Resort in California is finally replacing a name many consider racist and sexist. The new name, Palisades Tahoe, takes its inspiration from a nearby mountain ridge near Lake Tahoe. sfgate.com reports the new name comes after the decision was made in early 2020 to change the name. Resort officials conducted extensive research into the controversial S word and decided to drop it. Resort officials held discussions with the nearby Washoe Nation that affirmed the position the word is widely considered a racist and sexist slur against Indigenous women. Now all signage, even the collars on ski patrol dogs, are being replaced. This week marks the 30th anniversary of the grand opening of the casino owned by the Viejas Band of Kumeyaay Indians. The $4.5 million casino opened to a packed house in 1991, as the San Diego Union Tribune reported. At the time of the grand opening, Tribal Chairman Anthony Pico shared his expectations for the new tribal enterprise. "I have a great deal of confidence in this venture, so much so that I can stand here today and say that it will be profitable." At the time, the tribe had just 240 citizens who lived on the Viejas Reservation. Potential profits from the casino were earmarked to upgrade the tribe's underground water system and also build new housing and schools. At the time, the closest competition was from the Sequan Indian Gaming Center, located 6 miles away. And it was the Cabazon Band of Mission Indians who took the case of Indian gaming to the U.S. Supreme Court and won in 1987. COVID-19 extended the reign of many tribal pageant winners, but last weekend, a new Miss Navajo Nation won the hearts and votes of judges. Niagara Rockbridge is the new Miss Navajo Nation. This was her second time running for the title, and she says she's dreamed of being Miss Navajo since she was a little girl.
This feeling of being Miss Navajo is really undescribable, and it's something I'm so happy and honored and humbled. And as you can see, the crown is a brand new one here, but it's a little bit heavy on the heavy side. And I always say, it's the weight of the nation that I feel I'm carrying with me now. It's the weight of the people and everything that needs to be addressed and that I can help and advocate for.
The first Miss Navajo competition was held in 1952, and it was simple. Contestants stood in front of a large audience, and whomever received the largest applause was crowned the winner. Nearly 70 years later, competition for the crown includes several categories, including butchering a sheep, demonstrating traditional knowledge, writing an essay, and performing a contemporary talent. The winner is now decided by a panel of judges. Shandine Parrish is the outgoing Miss Navajo, and she held the title an extra year due to the pandemic. She was recognized for her work helping to distribute food, water, and other resources to the Navajo people during the pandemic. Sterling Harjo, co-creator of the new hit series Reservation Dogs, is pulling back the curtain on some of its secrets. Harjo, who is Seminole and Muskogee, says parts of the show are a reflection of his own life. From his friend Cheese to his vest-wearing dad named Brownie, Harjo says these personal touches are all key ingredients to the show's success. He also credits his co-creator, Taika Waititi, for his achievement and says working with his friends in an all-native writer's room is a dream.
We're just really excited, really proud of the writers, you know. It was this thing, we're all friends and we, have our own stories of whatever, trying to make it in this business. So to be doing it with them is really gratifying.
To read more about this story, visit our website, indiancountrytoday.com, and search for the headline, Director Sterling Harjo Talks Reservation Dogs. And those are the headlines for Indian Country Today. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Coming up, California's recall election results are in. We'll talk with a Native leader about the results. And next, we'll meet the first woman elected to lead the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi. We'll be right back with Chairwoman Rebecca Richards. The Pokagon Band of Potawatomi Indians received federal restoration in 1994, and since then, only men have been elected to lead the tribe. This year, however, 3 women were among the candidates who ran for the head office. Rebecca Richards received the most votes, becoming the first woman to lead the tribe for the next 3 years. She joins us today to talk about her historic win and what her plans are for the Pokagon Band. Welcome, Chairwoman Richards.
Hello. It's nice to be here.
Well, congratulations on your historic win. Tell us about the path to your leadership position. You were living in Hawaii when your tribe actually was granted federal recognition. What did that mean to you?
Yes, I moved to Hawaii after graduation from Western Michigan University and worked in the insurance industry. But I always had a tie to the tribe, as my mom had worked here at the tribe as a state tribe when we were a state tribe, and she would drag us to tribal council meetings when we were kids. But I always listened in and knew what was going on and had a pulse of the community. So when we were federally recognized, my degree being in public administration, I wanted to come back and serve and be a grant writer. I knew that we were going to need that service. So I moved back in 1994 and got a job here at the tribe, starting out as a grant writer, which quickly moved into a compliance role as we had reports that were due for the tribe. So I started in 1995, shortly after restoration, and it's been, building the ground up since federal recognition for my service here with the band.
And well, certainly, since you've had those years of working with the tribe, you've had a lot of time to observe leadership. And when you campaigned, you said that women have served in these supporting roles, but that it was time to put a woman in the front to lead your nation. How do you see yourself governing different from the men who have served in this position?
Well, I think from a woman's perspective, we have a need to make sure that everyone's okay. And that's something that I want to make sure our citizens have everything that they need, from healthcare, education, housing, all those important issues, and being a citizen in the community, getting out and having a pulse with what's happening for our citizens and how they're feeling, how they're doing. I feel like we have a little bit more in touch to that side of um, how they feel and what their needs are. So I know that from a woman's perspective, it's a little more in depth. And I felt it was time that a woman be in front, be a leader. We have been in those supporting roles, but um, with my years of experience, I felt that I could be a strong leader and something for the tribe to lead us through this um, currently hard time with the pandemic. And I put my name in the hat, and I was so ecstatic um, to be chosen and to be elected as the tribal chair to lead this nation.
Well, you're taking over in a time of a pandemic. And so you've got that on your plate immediately. Of course, you've been working with that in the past as well. On top of that, your tribe is in two different states, Indiana and Michigan. So you've got a lot to work with. Talk about those jurisdictional agreements that you have between your tribe and two different state governments.
Correct. Um, Being the only federally recognized tribe in Indiana, uh, as well as our Michigan status, we have cooperative agreements for law enforcement, and we have relationships to build not only with the state government in one state, Michigan, but we also have Indiana. Our tribe never had state lines when we were historically in this area in the St. Joe River Valley. So a state line isn't really recognized by the tribe. We don't look at it that way. Unfortunately, that's the way it's drawn today. So we have to build relationships in both states and with the local municipalities where we reside and we have land holdings. So it's a big job to make sure that we communicate, that we are good neighbors, and that we try to build those relationships.
So many elected leaders have goals they want to set for the first 100 days in office. What's your first goal?
Really, it's stabilizing from this pandemic. We have been closed, offices have been closed, and it feels like that uncertainty and unknown to our citizens, what services are open, what they can come to the reservation for, um, how we're conducting our meetings. And I just feel like we can communicate better and try to make sure that all the needs are being met through services to our citizens.
All right. Well, once again, congratulations, Chairwoman Richards, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Now let's turn to another election, this one in California, where people went to the polls yesterday to vote in a special election. Early results show that Governor Gavin Newsom defeated a recall election and will stay in office. Here to discuss the results and reaction to the election is Tracy Edwards, and she's the CEO of the Redding Rancheria, located in Northern California. Hello, Tracy.
Good morning.
Well, that was a pretty quick election here, understanding that there are a lot of mail-in ballots that still need to be counted. But how did your tribe organize around this special election and inform the citizens on what was at stake?
You know, it was interesting. Up in Northern California, there was a very strong sentiment to recall Governor Newsom. I think when I checked this morning, up in our area, 66% of our constituents had actually voted to recall the governor. So our tribe is very active in native vote counts. We record messages, we get out there to our community, and we let them know how important it is they count. Our tribe we're nonpartisan. Our tribal council has, members who are on both sides of the political parties, but our tribe knew that it was important that we keep Governor Newsom in office because we've been working with him and we were very unfamiliar with the other candidates that were running.
One of the things that led to his recall election was the way he handled the coronavirus pandemic. People were upset with that. How did the way he handled the pandemic align with how your tribe handled the pandemic?
I think we were pretty much in step with the governor. I do think we were very pleased in the very beginning that he said that, he put out some mandates, but he said that the tribes were sovereign nations. He encouraged us to put some things into place, but he left us alone to do what we wanted to do. I think our tribe was very proactive. We had shut down our casino for 8 weeks. We put safety measures into place. We've been advocating for everybody to get vaccinated. And knock on wood, I feel like we're doing a very good job in our tribe to follow the guidelines and stay open and keep people safe and well.
And does that pretty much reflect Governor Newsom's relationship with not just your tribe, but all tribes in encouraging tribal sovereignty, but not meddling, so to speak?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard. None of us can speak for each other's tribe, but I know that, he said statewide that the tribes had their own leeway to do with what they want. So, I believe all the tribes in California put different measures into place that, worked for them. As people may or may not know, California is really two different states. We have our urban areas and we have our rural areas. And sometimes they're very different in the way they choose to handle things. Up here in Northern California, people are a little more lax with the guidelines. If you were to travel into the Bay Area or Los Angeles County, I think it's very different. So we do what works for our areas. And I think the governor allowed us to have that leeway.
I believe there were something like 46 candidates running in this recall election. And we know that in about another year and a half, there will be an actual election for governor. When it comes to tribal sovereignty, these candidates who declared this election, what do they know about sovereignty? What's been your experience with them in this short campaign, and comparing that to the next campaign that's going to happen?
That's a very good point. I think, it's almost silly when you look that there's a slate of 46 people and we were not contacted by any of them. I think a couple of them ventured up into the North State, to meet constituents, but nobody contacted the tribe specifically. And so, that leads me to believe that perhaps they're not aware of the tribes and their sovereignty and the government to government relationships that we have with the state. And so I think we were a little concerned, when you looked at the cast of 46, I don't think that there was a better alternative to continue working with the tribe where we're at right now.
So that kind of sets the tribe up, again, and not just your tribe, but all tribes, to start working with any candidates in the future election to see how they're going to work with tribes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that, and usually they reach out to us. And I think that's a good indicator when a candidate actually reaches out to the tribe first, that they, maybe have more of a willingness to work with tribes.
All right. And really quickly here, the election cost nearly $300 million. Was that money well spent?
No, I don't think so. If you don't like the candidate, I think, there's an election rotation and you should probably just vote them out at the next time. So it doesn't seem like it, especially with the lopsided victory that the governor had in keeping his job.
All right. Well, Tracy Edwards with the Redding Rancheria, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much.
And when we come back, are we in for a government shutdown? We'll find out when we talk with John Tahsuda. John Tahsuda III is a regular contributor to Indian Country Today. He's worked as the staff director for the Senate Indian Affairs Committee, and he is also a former Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. And today he's a partner with Navigators Global, which is a company that provides political services to several industries, including tribes. John Tahsuda joins us today to talk about policy and the impact on Indian country. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks for having me.
Well, we have an October 1st deadline that's kind of looming here. Are we headed for a government shutdown? Is it almost traditional that we have a shutdown now?
It does seem to sadly be almost a tradition every couple of years now that we have to go through one of these. As Congress often does, it puts itself into these timelines in which that it can't meet. So we have a couple of weeks till the end of the fiscal year. And the House has done most of its appropriations work, but the Senate has done, at least formally, has not passed, any of its bills, and so that means that there is no time to do the normal appropriations process. How they usually handle it, of course, is with a continuing resolution. But there are a lot of other things this year that are kind of monkey wrenches into the gears. We have a debt limit increase that needs to happen. We're already past the federal government's debt limit, and the Department of Treasury is having to take what they call extraordinary measures to continue to pay the nation's bills through the debt authorities that it currently still has, and putting off other things. And so that has to be dealt with. That adds additional pressure for members of Congress as they contemplate getting legislation on appropriations and the debt limit done at the same time. And we, of course, have all these things that have been talked about now since for the whole year. These large, new spending bills that the Democrats are proposing. We have the infrastructure bill that has broad bipartisan support, but still hasn't been able to get enacted. So these things are all coming crashing at the same time, which is what Congress often does, and why we often end up with CRs and sometimes shutdowns.
And this is, when the average person hears this, it's almost like not understandable. Then when you look at tribal leadership, how are tribes dealing with this? Are they, what should they be doing?
Well, so first, yes, I think the average person looks at this and says, why can't you guys do your job? And on a certain level, it is pretty basic. I mean, just, get some legislation to keep the government funded and rolling. And Congress often adds additional spending throughout the year. It seems, kind of strange that they do this selves to them. And I think the average person has a hard time understanding. And for tribal leaders, I mean, for many of them, I think, especially those who haven't spent years dealing with the federal government, it's a hard thing to understand as well. One of the things I think that tribes, really have to look at is when they see this kind of a train wreck coming, what can they do to prepare for it? What can they do to continue to provide services for a few weeks, a month? We've gone even longer periods with no government funding. And so if they have other resources that they can tap to continue to provide critical services, they really need to plan for that and think about that. And then, when the funding finally comes through, the federal government always makes up. Nobody actually, at the end of the day, loses funding. But it's this shortness of cash in the pocket that really hits folks.
And then, of course, this is also coming in a time of pandemic. Does that add pressure to the situation?
Well, that's interesting. So, there's still a lot of funding that tribes have through the last COVID funding bill. There was about $20 billion going directly to tribes, but there are limits on what that money could be used for. And, it would be tempting, I'm sure, for a tribal leader to say, oh, well, we'll just tap into that fund. But they do need to be careful that they don't run afoul of the rules that are applied to that funding. And so that is going to create some issues, I think, for some folks, and some troubles.
All right, let's turn to the census data. It shows that in the last decade, Indian country population just skyrocketed, basically. But there's a lot of fear that those increase in population numbers won't translate to political power for tribes. Is that fear warranted?
Well, so there's really two impacts directly on tribes, I think, from getting more accurate census counts. And I think part of the increase that we've seen is not just an increase in tribal populations, but also more accurate census counting, which is really critical. And I have to be honest, my view on this is that in some ways the most important part of it is the funding aspect. So many of the government service programs that we're dependent upon are dependent upon these population counts, and the census is really the basis for all of these. And so having accurate counts in tribal areas and counts that not are just tribal members, but all of the native folks that live in those areas, and even other folks who are impacted by services by the tribe, those folks need to be in those counts so that the tribes can get the resources they need for those. And so that, to me, that is the most critical thing. It's something that we worked on at Interior with the census folks to try to get that to be more accurate. It's still, I believe, a work in progress, and I really encourage the administration to continue to look at that, because that is a critical piece of funding for the tribes.
Good point, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Your life is precious. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Join us again tomorrow.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run. Standing rock. This is Indian Country Today.